Nowadays, many in the game reviewer class see Jank as a blight, a horrible and imperfect affront to the superficially objective system they've conjured up to turn every review into a neat tick box exercise. As a true keyboard warrior who, just like Genghis Khan, Napoleon and Winnie the Pooh, has always been ready to brave any terrain in my desire for seated conquest, this obsession with polish and hatred of Jank,
and 2 takes on Deathmatch. You just have to ignore a lot of those graphical and control issues to really enjoy it.
always seemed odd to me, but I couldn't quite grasp why. At first I thought my anti-mainstream perspective was just the natural product of a difference of opinion, and nothing more. But when I began to investigate, I discovered an interesting pattern, a broken style of thinking that, just like an Israeli strike, seemed to always leave behind a trail of prepubescent victims, while protecting the worst perpetrators in the industry. Sorry, turns out the whole prepubescent part is just Israel. But regardless, there is a clear trend of mainstream reviewers systematically placing nigh every half-decent AAA game on an unnaturally high pedestal, just because of the benefits that come with more money, like shiny graphics and nice FPS, while new IP or indie games that actually made an impact on the industry are downgraded just because of the odd imperfection or awkward feature. Games like Kingdom Come and Mountain Blade that spawned industries of creators, endless YouTube love letters, and a positive reception all around were ranked below extinction level failures like Starfield. And there are countless more examples of similar travesties. But what does the mainstream fail to understand about Jank? Why is there such a distinct pattern of failure? Well, you see, I recently uncovered a conspiracy of bribes permeated. I'm just joking. I actually came to a moment of revelation about the nature of Jank when I decided to give the original Dragon's Dogma a chance. But before I go into my theory, remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Anyway, back to the video. From the outset, everything about its intro was shockingly bad on paper. The first few combat encounters were a simple hack and slash fare. The dialogue was brain-chillingly awful.
Take hold of what lies beyond. Claim mastery over the eternal ring.
And the whole atmosphere had a cheesy, unfinished feel that never quite felt believable. But I was loving it, and the more I played, the more my fondness grew. You see, through all of its mediocrity, it had something that most polished or well put together games lack: a genuine creative spark, the sort of magic that made it stand out among the endless cesspool of RPGs who were trying to capitalize on the success of classics like Skyrim in that period. Sure, it has issues. No one would feasibly describe Dragon's Dogma as refined or put together. The fast travel system alone is so archaic that it feels like it was created by a guy who went into a coma in 2003 and emerged a decade later, completely unaware of what happened in the previous 10 years. But I believe it was this same willingness to accept imperfection, even embrace it, that freed the developers to truly experiment with genuinely new, innovative, and unique systems, without which the game would have been a standard copy-paste fare, a blank page in the vast chronicle of the action RPG, forgotten in the midst of genre titans like The Witcher 3 and Skyrim. In other words, it was the Jank that really enabled Dragon's Dogma to stand out. And so to deride Jank and celebrate polish is to punish risk-taking and creativity. And this is why the mainstream systematically fails to understand the impact of non-AAA games. Now, I'm sure at this stage some of you might be thinking, what are you going on about? Are you suggesting that poor game design should simply be accepted? Well, no, but I also think it should be heavily contextualized within the broader experience. For a simple reason, often it's impossible to separate the jank from the innovation. Just like in mathematics, the revolutionary is often conjoined to the irrelevant and untested. A genius mathematician working on theoretical proofs over decades may only produce one theory that has use in reality. But we celebrate the overall effort because without risk, there is no reward. A scientist that never takes a gamble will only be consistently mediocre, whereas the one willing to throw their unrefined or incomplete theses at a wall until something sticks could come up with something that changes the world as we know it. And innovation in the game industry operates by the same rules. Devs rarely get things completely right the first time around, partly because of budget and time constraints, but also the difficulty of reconciling the old with the new. Innovative developers who are obsessed with making a clean break from the past will often have to make difficult choices to flesh out they're one great idea that will stand the test of time and entrap players more than any clean but otherwise boring AAA title. It's often only on the second or sometimes third or fourth attempt to refine a formula that a complete masterpiece can be created. But without this willingness to accept jank, to invite imperfection, progress will never happen. It took Larian a decade to complete the CRPG revolution they started with Divinity Original Sin and produce their universally renowned masterpiece, Baldur's Gate 3.
And the game of the year is Baldur's Gate 3.
Likewise, Oblivion needed to terrify the world with unimaginably bad voice acting.
Oh no, what do we do? I'm so scared.
Faces that resembled an ill-conceived moose and combat fresh out of the PS2 era to produce Skyrim. In the same way that Kingdom Come Deliverance had to have more migrating textures than Migrants for it to take the risks that enabled it to be one of the celebrated standouts of its generation. Now, I'm not saying that jank in a game necessarily implies a spark of creative genius. Sometimes devs produce a product that fails in every way, but games that are innovative are often a little rough around the edges as well. And devs should not be punished by the mainstream for innovation, but instead celebrated more for the risks they took and the joy they provided, than simply how well they compare to a bunch of tick box ideals that simply serve to justify mediocrity, shun creativity, and valorize higher budgets. Because not only does this erode the credibility of the mainstream, but it fails to appreciate the effort of developers working all around the clock on the verge of insanity to produce quality titles. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, leave me a comment.